Before my mum married my dad, she actually dated a guy called Craig. At first, he was actually a really sweet guy, but he slowly became abusive. My mum tried to leave multiple times, but Craig always threatened her. After one violent argument, my mum waited and fled in the middle of the night. Years passed, and she got married and had me. My dad's work included a lot of travelling, so it was mostly my mum and I alone in our big acreage home. My mum was in the kitchen making lasagna while I was sitting on my high chair one day. It was an extremely hot day too, so she opened the kitchen door to let in some air. But it wasn't too long after this that she heard heavy footsteps enter in the kitchen behind her. My excited mum assumed that it was my dad, and she turned around with a "Hello, my love." Her excitement immediately turned to horror, because there was Craig standing in the middle of our kitchen with a gun visibly tucked into his pants. Craig smiled at her and asked what she was making. My mum mustered enough courage and said lasagna. She was physically shaking as Craig sat himself down beside me. He sort of playfully pinched my cheek, and I laughed at him. My mum was holding back tears as she finally asked what he was doing in the house. Craig said that he just wanted to visit my mum and he would leave when he was done eating. And when the lasagna was ready, she served it to him. My mum took me and sat across from Craig so she could keep an eye on him. Craig said that he still had her things at his house and she was welcome to get them. My mum said that she didn't need any of it and that he could throw it out. Craig started to get agitated at this and said that she threw him away like garbage too. Craig said that she was acting tough, but he knew deep down inside that she was still the stupid girl that he had dated. Craig claimed that my mum needed him in her life and that she couldn't function if he wasn't there to help her. He said that he needed to be there to raise me because my dad was, well, some nasty words, who would never be able to protect my mum and I. Craig said that if he was crazy, that he could have easily kidnapped us or done things to my mum because my dad was weak and he wouldn't be able to protect what was his. At this, my mum started to cry and told Craig to leave the house. Craig said that it wasn't her house and that he had the right to be there. My mum said that if he didn't leave, that she would call the police, which really made him angry. Craig threatened then that if the cops got involved, that he would hire men to cut her up into pieces and film it. My mum started to cry even louder, and an agitated Craig threw his plate and yelled at her to stop crying and that he loved her. I got scared and started to cry too, which caused Craig to stand up and approach my mum. She jumped out of a chair with me cradled in her arms. She begged for Craig to spare my life. Craig tried to reach over to touch my mum, but she got so scared that she fell to the floor sobbing. The phone began to ring and Craig became so overwhelmed that apparently he just ran out of the house. The cops and his family found him about to shoot himself in his head, and his adult son had to convince him not to do it. My mum was so traumatized that she didn't want to deal with any of it, so she got a restraining order against him, and eventually her and my dad moved across the country. I was curious though, and I searched this guy up and was shocked to see that he was dating a college-age girl who looked just like the woman he couldn't have. Three years ago, October in Minnesota, I just started dating my now wife. I was really obsessed with working out and asked her if she would like to use one of my guest passes at the YMCA. She begrudgingly agreed, and we started heading to the closest YMCA near her house. We were about a couple of miles away from the gym with my wife driving south on a busy street when I noticed on the other side of the road heading north, a woman was walking on the sidewalk while holding something. Next to her too, driving slowly on the shoulder of the road, was an F-350. And I don't know why, but the hairs on my neck stood up and I shuddered after seeing them. My whole body had goosebumps. I told my wife that she needed to do a U-turn so we could see what was going on. We did the U-turn and got behind the F-350. I noticed immediately, too, that the woman was barefoot and holding a baby wrapped in a blanket. I got out of the car at this, and I told my wife to stay in the car and to call the police if anything happened. When I started walking towards the woman, The first thing that I noticed was that she was barefoot. With it being October in Minnesota too, the temperature was around 50 degrees, so no one should be walking around without shoes and socks on. When I got closer to her, I saw that the baby was only wearing a diaper wrapped in a thin blanket. As I got closer, I hear the guy in the truck yelling at the woman to please get in the truck now. I finally reached the woman and asked if she was okay and if she needed help. She said yes, and that the guy wouldn't leave her alone. Right then, a different woman started jogging past. I forgot my phone in the car, so I asked the woman jogging if she had a cell phone, and if she could call the police, which she did immediately. I turned around to face the truck, and I see the man getting out. As he's walking towards us, he's now pleading with this woman to get in his truck with him. I positioned myself between him and this woman, and he stopped when he was about 3 feet away from me. I told him that he wasn't going to come any closer and that the police were on their way. Now, while the guy did stop walking towards us, he completely ignored me though and didn't acknowledge what I just said. And this is where the story gets a little weird. You see, the two of them started having a conversation that just made zero sense, with me standing in between them. He said, "Honey, just get in the truck and come home." She said, "You kicked me out and told me to leave." He said, "No, I didn't. I came upstairs and you and the baby were gone." She said, "You never let me leave," which was the opposite of what she just said, and never let me do anything and never let me spend any of our money. He said, "We don't have any money. Our credit cards are maxed out. You don't have shoes on and our baby is cold. Please, let's just go home." She then yelled, "I am never coming home with you. You don't let us do anything ever." At this point, 2 police cars showed up with 4 cops. 1 cop spoke with the man and 1 with the woman, and the other 2 cops took statements from both me and the jogger. To this day, I'm still not sure what took place that day with the couple and the baby. I had stepped in because I guess I had automatically assumed that some sort of abuse was taking place where the woman was trying to escape in. Maybe that was happening, or maybe the woman was having some sort of a mental breakdown. I don't know what happened there, but something really strange was going on, and the fact that that lady was out there walking barefoot and barely anything, and also the baby was wrapped like it was a pretty risky situation for sure, particularly for the child, but I don't know. Maybe they're okay, maybe they're not. All I can say is that it was a really weird and sort of creepy situation, which I'm grateful that the police handled in the end. So this happened in Brazil when I was about 10 or 11, around 2004. I remember it was exactly 9 p.m. and I was playing The Sims on the family computer with my cousin. I got to the cabinet, got a glass cup, and went to the water filter. The filter was right next to the big window with undulating glass panels. Common in Brazil, something for privacy, I think. The undulated glass made everything that was far look fractured, and the closer an object was, the less distorted it got. I wasn't paying much attention to my surroundings, but I was always a little scared of going into the kitchen at night because every time I turned the lights on, pigeons that were just chilling outside, there was a narrow corridor to the backyard outside the kitchen window with a high wall separating the houses. They started flapping their wings frantically, making a lot of noise and honestly scaring me half to death. Anyway, this time I didn't really check if there were pigeons because I didn't hear any noise. The windows were closed and there was only one light source lighting the outside. I finally fill my cup and I start drinking, and as soon as I'm finished and start putting the glass down, I look up and there's a dark shape outside. And because I was holding a glass cup, I was carefully putting it down before considering running away, but I took that time to take a very good look at it. It was so close to the window that there wasn't much distortion at all. The shape of a dark brown, but not brown like human skin, head, and a neck with huge pitch black, almost perfect circles as eyes. There was no indication of a nose or ears, but there was a small shadow where the mouth should be, as if it was a very small mouth with no lips. But the strange thing is that I didn't move the slightest the whole time that it was there. The black eyes felt like they were staring right at me. I was petrified. Afterwards, I absolutely bolted out of the kitchen, screaming and telling my cousin to go check on that window. She obviously didn't want to, so I myself, after about 2 minutes, went back to check, and there was nothing there. There was no sound, there was no creature or thing, whatever it was. Me and my granddad went to check the backyard the next day, and there was nothing out of the ordinary. I was never a kid that really believed in anything paranormal, but it was so strange that I still don't really know what to make of it.